This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. This is our trade blast for 24th of March 2020. I'm at a place called the AC Hotel on Miami Beach. I'm going to give you guys a better view of the view we have here. The hotel is kind of weird because it's kind of on a corner on Collins Avenue, but instead of having you look into the hotel room, I'm trying to pick up the view here a bit. So I appreciate your indulgence. Make sure that I have my sound straight. Yes, I do. Any rate, thanks for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. Obviously, you're a Patreon supporter. Therefore, you're on our Trade Blast. Thank you for your support. We're heading into an interesting trade day today. Obviously, the piling up bodies around the world, especially in Italy, is an issue. We also have all these businesses shut down as people have to stay indoors everywhere. Just a lot happening. This is a sidebar note, but I'm really excited right now in the Washington, D.C. area. I was able to turn off my heat, and it's really nice to, if I'm traveling, not forget, oh, by the way, I didn't shut the heat off. So it's really nice to enter the springtime, if you will, along with the cherry blossoms, which we'll bring into the show by tomorrow. Today's Trade Blast really focuses on the fact that how many pieces of amazingly bad information are there out there. I'm trying to control the light here because the light from the window actually creates some challenges, so I apologize for it being a little rough. So basically, the list is long. The piling up bodies from coronavirus, the fact that there are so many companies whose products aren't being sold or consumers can't get to them. I think we all know, based on TV watching and being indoors, how long this list is. I've been keeping an eye on Tesla for the last couple of 3 hours, and basically it's sort of been rotating from as much as 20 down to about $6 down. And based on how little it's dropped so far, it kind of has that feeling that it actually might rise today, which is totally amazing, given that everything they're manufacturing in the US is shut down. The expectation we have is that today is going to be a really rough day for the market. It was limit down at the open, kind of a trading maybe 3 hours ago. Now we're at, obviously we're not limit down anymore. We're down 500 points on the Dow, maybe 150 points on the NASDAQ, and S&P is down as well. I'm impressed that I expected limit down at the open today, and I think that could still happen, but I'm very impressed that we aren't limit down and maintaining that right now. So, I would love to have a huge explanation here, but the only thing I could think of is the fact that sometimes there are rules that are associated with what kind of trading is allowed once we go limit down. So I actually think this is kind of helping Tesla right now, because if you went 13% down or some big number, obviously you would pre-market be in pretty bad shape. I still think things are rough, but it's nice to see things aren't just like, let's go to zero right now zone. I guess I would love to sort of add something that's really mind-blowing to what I'm seeing. And this is sort of a weird direction to go for a trade blast, but I wanted to revisit what happened on Friday, which I think is pretty awesome. So we had discussed the fact that there's a pin, which is the attempt to keep a stock price below a certain number. But one of the things I kind of got into was what I call a reverse pin. And in this case, what we're talking about is, if there's a whole bunch of people with calls, you want to put those people, sort of wipe them out and take their money away. That's why you force the price below a certain stock price. There's another situation, which is if you look at the statistics and most people have a negative bias, one of the other ways you can take their money away is by elevating the stock prices to a decent level so that you wipe out a whole bunch of people that you've sold puts to. So if you look at Friday, oil was up 25%. Wow. So was, in this case, We had an updraft of Tesla at 470 even, which is totally amazing given all the crazy and not so great news that's been going on. So when we add all this up, the conclusion I came to was, well, wait a second here. Are we in an up market and didn't know it, based on what was happening on Friday, and we're about to miss the great run that you always hear about? Some people decided to go the other side of the trade and make a killing in the process. And the answer I was coming up with was that doesn't make any sense, because if anything, if you're relying on earnings from companies, all that's happening is those numbers keep getting worse. So I thought Friday was a really amazing day because it was like, wow, Tesla at 470 was like, holy smoke, is it about to cross 500 and make a run despite the coronavirus? We obviously kind of got the answer to that at the end of the trade day, but one of the things I like trading. I think it's really interesting. One of the aspects that's fascinating about it is the fact that, if you have the power and technique and the money, you can sort of create the environment you want for a day or a few hours. And as I watched what went on Friday, I was really impressed by the quality of trading that one can do if you work with the big firms, because you have all these resources on the table at your disposal. I'm calling it the X trade right now because one of the ways you learn trading and investing in tight windows like this is learning about the possibilities of what people can do and baking that into your assessment of what can occur. So the best example, and I'm calling it the X trade, and for those of you who want to be wealthy, who enjoy the trading side of our discussion, I really think that X trade, I call it the X trade because it was so beautiful. It's like the X on the iPhone. It just, it's number 10, it's an X, it's a interesting round number, if you will. So my X trade was when Tesla was at 960. And as we've related in our earlier show, the goal of that trade was to make sure on that Friday that Tesla ended up below 750, because that firm stood to lose perhaps billions of dollars on a very big call that had been purchased a long time earlier. And so they explained how they did it. Number one, they put negative news out there on Market Watch. Number two, they went out and they actually borrowed 2 million shares and sold them $10 below market. So the initial bad news triggered the bots to start selling stock. The second round of selling 2 million shares below market caused a further dip in pricing. The third component of it was because you were just above 900 and there are a whole bunch of people who had stop losses at 900, the fact that you had those two other selling incidents caused it to hit the 900. Now you had people who hit their stop losses that were being sold out automatically. So you had this cascade of downward pressure. And as you know, within a 24-hour period, Tesla went from 960 to 710. And that was just, I just thought that was mind-blowing to see that occur. But after it was explained how they did it, I kind of understood better. So after watching what I call the X trade, one can kind of leverage sort of that whole sort of circumstance into noting how the markets can be dealt with in the short term. And this is why it's encouraged that most people not get involved in trading that's sub a month away from expiration, but literally sub a week or two away could actually be a very risky trading environment. And sort of how these guys pulled off that trade is sort of an illustration of that. So I thought it was fascinating because we're all sitting back and wondering, is our thesis on Tesla wrong? Hence all the movement and therefore people selling out and not sure what's happening. But it was quite clear afterwards that it was just a really beautiful structured trade process that took advantage of all the latest elements of how trading is done. And I just really think that, sometimes you can sort of break apart a trade and just note all the elements of what was happening. One last component of that trade I thought was fascinating is that there was a process where people stopped. Initially, they would get a downgrade from Morgan Stanley or one of the other banks, and then you would see movement of the stock price to actually do a mini version of what I just described. And then if you watch as the weeks progressed, people sort of got wind of the fact that, when this occurs, this is clearly just an attempt to manipulate the stock short term, driven by the major banks coming in and sort of making small moves to jam people. And so I just was impressed by the ability of the market to adjust to what they were seeing and therefore not be baited into sort of bad trading by that activity. So long-winded statement to say, we're in our trade blast for today. We think that we're in a down market and Tesla is in a down situation given the shutdown of their facilities. Our show that's coming up probably today, but possibly by tomorrow, really focuses on what I call the Elon Musk secret weapon, related to how I think he could pull off a miracle and manage production, et cetera, in ways that most people didn't expect. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, lehitraot, choda hafez, zdravstvuyte, ni hao ma. And in Jamaica we say, enough respect, walk good. Thanks for your patronage, and we look forward to our next conversation. Have a great day, and bye for now.